Hello everybody, welcome to Saturday Baseball. It's 9 a.m. and today we're going to talk about some news and notes. We're going to go through the box scores and we're going to talk about some underrated and sleeper picks for your drafts, because this is definitely draft season. Let me know if the sound is good in the chat room and we'll get started. So yesterday in the NCAA tournament, I think the number 1 seed got knocked out by the number 16 seed, which happens all the time in NCAA tournament. But it's been almost 10 years since the number 1 overall seed won the NCAA tournament. And this is what makes March Madness so much fun. It's really whoever shows up to play that day, because it's one game and that's it. Kind of like the World Baseball Classic, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Let me check the chat room. Nice to see you all. Sound is good. Thank you so much. All right, Brandon Nimmo is hurt. If you were checking in the chat room yesterday or this morning, you'll see that George updated us on Brandon Nimmo. He had to be helped off the field yesterday. It looks like he hurt his knee. It seems like the Mets are just an injury waiting to happen, right? I mean, one guy, Big Al, was talking yesterday about how they need to bring these guys home from the World Baseball Classic immediately, and it just goes to show you that it doesn't mean you can't get hurt in Miami. It doesn't mean you can't get hurt in Florida, just like you could get hurt at the WBC. So anyways, Brandon Nimmo, their leadoff batter, he left yesterday's game with right ankle soreness. He's going to undergo imaging today. He had to be helped off the field by trainers. He slid into second base in the bottom of the 4th inning, and it looks like he hurt his knee, really. They say it's an ankle. I would say they need to get some scans on his knee, too, because that's where he grabbed when he slid. And usually you grab the part of your body that's killing you. We'll see what happens to Brandon Nimmo. Gonsolin. Dave Roberts yesterday finally acknowledged that Tony Gonsolin being in the rotation to start the season is not going to happen. That leads the Dodgers, I think, to rely on Ryan Pepio, which we'll talk about in Undervalued Sleepers later on in the podcast. So Team Puerto Rico, World Baseball Classic, just 48 hours ago, Edwin Diaz went down in the celebration. He's going to be out for months, 8 months, because he needs surgery now. And his brother, Alexis Diaz, gave up 3 runs without getting an out yesterday. And Puerto Rico loses after they beat the Dominican Republic out of the World Baseball Classic. Now they were beat by Mexico. And I would assume that they're out now too. They lost 5-4. There's a lot of viewership of the World Baseball Classic. The USA Great Britain opener averaged 1.592 million viewers between the 2 Fox Sports networks. It was the most watched first round World Baseball Classic game in the United States since 2009. And somebody asked yesterday, when does this World Baseball Classic end? And I believe it ends in just a couple of days. It'll be over on the 22nd of March. At least they don't have any games scheduled. So I scanned through it, and I do believe that the very last game is on the 21st of March. Did you know that you could fit every major leaguer who played at least 1,500 games on 2 Boeing 777 airplanes? That's about 10 years worth of playing time. 1,500 games. We all know there's 162 games a season in baseball. And the amount of players that have lasted 10 years or more is slim. Really, if you consider all the players that have played in Major League Baseball over the years, I mean, this is going back all the way through history. Lyle Overbay, former first baseman, is one of those players. He actually played 1,500 games. That's useless info, okay, by the way. Anyway, back to useful info. Yordan Alvarez is scheduled to take on-field batting practice today, and that would be the first time doing so this spring, so Just a year or two ago, I remember trying to stay away from Yordan Alvarez because he was just an injury waiting to happen. In fact, he had surgery on both of his ankles at one point. He had both of his knees messed up. And he still, surprisingly, came back from those two surgeries and absolutely tore it up. He's clearly one of the hardest hitting batters in baseball. So it's nice to see him scheduled to take on-field batting practice. Now, moving over to the Mariners. The utility player Dylan Moore was diagnosed with a grade 1 strain in his oblique, and he told that to reporters yesterday. And that's the lowest degree of oblique strain, grade 1. I really don't care. You just never know with these. They say that he can't do any baseball activity between 2 and 4 weeks. And why do I bring this up? Because Dylan Moore is pretty much useless in fantasy, but Colton Wong is not useless in fantasy. And interestingly enough, with Colton Wong, I do think he's not listed in my undervalued sleeper category, but I did put some notes on him in here when I saw the Dylan Moore situation, because Colton Wong is being drafted 271 overall. That's like the 25th round in fantasy baseball. He's batting leadoff every day for the Mariners. Even with Dylan Moore healthy, he was batting off every day. And they said, going into the season, they said, well, there's likely chance that he's going to get platooned because he did not hit lefties good at all last year. He batted 138 against lefties, but that is a complete outlier. If you look at his history, he's never hit bad against lefties. Last year, he did not hit good against lefties. I don't really know why that is, but every other year, he's been fine against lefties. Leading off is a big deal in fantasy because really, if you look at the standings at the end of the year, you see the guy with the most runs. His team is usually in the top 3 of, people love to target saves. They love to target stolen bases, but neither of these categories will win you a league. The runs category is so important because it just shows how many at-bats you're getting and how many opportunities you have to get points and to get those categories that we're looking for. He still batted .281 with a .372 on base percentage, 9 home runs and 7 steals in 64 games after the All-Star break because he had a calf strain last year. So if you look at his numbers and you see that he stole 15 or 17 bases and hit 15 homers, all of that was done after the All-Star break because he was out for 3 weeks with a bad calf. He only has cleared 500 plate appearances once or maybe twice in his career, but batting leadoff it's going to happen, and we'll see if he can remain healthy. But here's the thing about Colton Wong, too. He's not flashy. He's not exciting, but he steals bases. He hits home runs. If he bats leadoff, that's an extra plus. Plus, his contact percentage went down last year. Guess what it went down to, though? It went down to 79 from 81, which is a huge contact percentage in baseball. Those are great pure hitters that we're talking about that hit close to 80% contact. He strikes out less than 20%. Last year, he struck out 17.7%, and he still takes walks. He walked 9% of the time last year. So, Colton Wong is absolutely somebody that you can grab late in drafts, and he should be in my undervalued players, but I didn't put him there until I saw Dylan Moore was out because they're talking about platooning him. Yes, I know he hit bad against lefties last year, but that was an outlier. If you look at his whole body of work, he's always hit fine against lefties before last year. So I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it was his calf strain that caused him problems. All right, we're going to talk about the box scores. I'm going to go and check out what's going on in the chat room. Hello to Danny Ogden. Hello to JR Bats. Hello, Moose and Mikey and Danny. Nice to see you. Big Al. SM King Turd is here. King Turd asked about... No, not Detmers. We're going to talk about Detmers, though, because I do like to bring that up now. The other day, he sent me a message in Twitter, and he said, I have the message, and we'll talk about it later. I put him in my undervalued sleeper players, but he did ask about this pitcher for the Angels yesterday. And I can't find it in the chat because I'd have to go back too far, which makes me very happy because that means everybody in the chat room is being active, and that's what we love. Okay, good morning to Big Al. Danny's birthday. Hello, Danny. Happy birthday. So nice to know that. All right. Yesterday it was Gallo's daughter's birthday, and we were saying happy birthday to his wife. So, happy birthday, Danny. All right, Colton Wong. I did enough of bragging about Colton Wong, so let's talk about the games. There really wasn't that much going on yesterday in games as far as I'm concerned. And I didn't see... Well, I'll keep going. It's in my notes. The Braves beat the Red Sox 8-0. So, ever since the Red Sox lost a game, and I see... Is King Hap here? You let me know, King Hap, if the Red Sox have won any games since they finally broke their... they were undefeated for like 8 games going into spring. The first 8 games or so, they were undefeated. And I don't think they've won a game since they lost that first game. They lost 8-0 yesterday to the Braves. Marcell Ozuna has the most at-bats of any player on this team for spring, which shows you that they are planning on using Marcell Ozuna. And where he hits in the batting order, that's left to be determined. But they're paying him too much money to sit on the bench, and he is a good DH, so we'll see how that goes. I think as long as he continues to hit, he's going to get everyday at-bats, and he could also be an underrated sleeper. Matt Olson hit 2 home runs yesterday. That's his 5th of the spring. It's no surprise that he's hitting home runs. But Schuster... We're going to talk about Schuster, Jared Schuster for the Braves. He threw 4 innings yesterday, 3 hits, 7 strikeouts, and his ERA on the spring is .71, and he is also a part of our undervalued sleepers that we'll do in the last segment. The Orioles beat the Twins 5-3, and Dean Kremer, who I think is an interesting... Look, I'm biased because I had to draft this guy in like the 25th round of an AL only. I figured when I drafted him, it was several weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and he wasn't listed in the rotation yet. He was at the bottom, like number 6, 7, or 8. He actually wasn't really being considered at that point, but since then, he's moved up in the rotation, and now he sits at number 3 for the Orioles behind Kyle Gibson and Cole Irvin. Yesterday, he allowed 2 runs on 3 hits and struck out 3 over 4 innings. And last year he had a 3.23 ERA for the Baltimore Orioles. He's 27 years old. He made 20 starts for them, and his whip was 1.25, 87 strikeouts, and 34 walks. I would say 34 walks is a big problem. I just think that his only big problem is walks, and he does have a decent arsenal. He has 5 different pitches that he uses, and that's because he added a sinker last year. In 125 innings, 34 walks. I guess that's not so bad, really. He was able to have a 1.25 whip. It's projecting him at RotoWire with a 4.23 ERA and a 1.35 whip. You don't want your whip over that high. You don't even really want a 1.25 whip, but in these day and age, you have to have it. 1.30 is a bad whip, though, so you have to watch out for this guy. But where he's being drafted, 529 overall, the Baltimore Orioles are getting much better, as Eddie will testify to that. I mean, we all know the Orioles are something to be reckoned with, especially now that the Red Sox are so bad. The Orioles could be a decent team, and they're getting better each year. Is Dean Kremer a great addition to your fantasy value? No. Is he a horrible addition? No. RotoWire has him at a 4.23 ERA. I don't really know why, since last year in his first season in the majors, he had a 3.23. I don't know how you get a 4.23 from a 3.23, but okay. That's a whole point higher in ERA. Maybe his FIP was different. I would have to look deeper into the numbers, but I think that RotoWire is not giving this guy enough credit. Is he going to be excellent? Probably not. But at that late in the draft, when you have to round out your pitching staff or you have to grab some reserves, give this guy a chance, because I think they're really undervaluing Dean Kremer. He's not going to be a star. And that's sad, but he looks to be their third starter in the rotation. The Rays, okay, the Pirates beat the Rays yesterday, 6-2. Not a lot going on here. Brujan stole his third base yesterday, and Bay, the shortstop for, is he a short? Yeah, he's a shortstop for Pittsburgh. It looks like he might be batting leadoff. We don't really know what to expect from this guy. Probably not enough to draft him on your fantasy team. Washington beat the Astros 11-7. Hunter Brown pitched yesterday for the Astros. I think this guy is going to be great. You got to love the pitching in Houston. They have great pitching coaches. They use a lot of that new technology over there. They were really the first team in baseball to start using it, and they bring up very good young pitchers. Now, Hunter Brown could be a little bit soon for him in his career, but he struck out 4 yesterday, 3 hits in 4 innings. He's got a 5 ERA this spring. I think he's going to be a great pitcher someday, but I do question what his role will be this year. Now that McCullers is out, which you can never rely on McCullers, it looks like Hunter Brown might get a chance to be their 5th starter in Houston, and I do think he's going to be a good pitcher someday. But I question where he's going in drafts. I think he is going with other experienced starting pitchers, and I don't like that too much. But Mackenzie Gore threw 4 innings yesterday, 9 hits allowed, 4 innings, 3 strikeouts. What happened to this guy's strikeouts, okay? Mackenzie Gore. He was with this huge star coming up in San Diego. Now all of a sudden he's in Washington. Number 1, he's not going to get shit for run support. Number 2, he can't strike out batters. So if anybody's drafting him these days, it's based off his name only because we all swooned over him as a prospect. Yankees lost to the Detroit Tigers 8-7. The Detroit Tigers just started scoring runs right away. In the first inning, the second inning, the third inning, they scored 5 runs, and they just kept scoring. Anthony Volpe batting leadoff yesterday doesn't mean everything. Believe me, it doesn't mean that he's staying up. I know everybody loves Anthony Volpe. I'm sure he's going to be great someday. I just don't know if they're going to keep him up when... I don't know. So Anthony Volpe played shortstop. Oswaldo Peraza played second base. Last year, Peraza played shortstop, and I think that they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with these guys where they have just a logjam in the middle infield in New York. And what about Gleyber Torres, right? I mean, sure, this would be fine. Volpe and Peraza, they're both speedsters. Definitely Peraza is one of the fastest runners in baseball. Where does Gleyber Torres go? Maybe he goes to Philly. That's what Lenny thinks. Lenny thinks that Gleyber Torres is up for sale. But until he gets traded, I wouldn't be drafting Volpe. You never know about that. He's an exciting youngster and everybody loves him. It's just how much are you going to pay for this kid who hasn't really proven himself even at AAA? Okay. Moving on. Austin Meadows batted leadoff. Jonathan Scope batting second. He could be a sleeper. Noah's batting average is going to suck and it's not going to help you. But seriously, I think he's being drafted like 500th. He has a job for sure. And then Riley Green hitting right behind him. Riley Green is another player that's going to be included in the final segment of this podcast, so we'll move on from there. The Phillies beat the Blue Jays 4-2. Chris Bassett had a horrible outing. He allowed 4 hits in 5 innings and struck out 1. 4.85 ERA on the spring. Home run for Rhys Hoskins, that's number 2 on the season. And Nick Castellanos, I was going to put Nick Castellanos in this last segment about undervalued and sleepers. I went to look him up because he got his 7th RBI yesterday of the spring. And he had such a bad season last year, I figured that he would be a sleeper. And what do you know? He's being drafted very high. I mean, how high? Like not maybe in the hundreds. He's being drafted in the hundreds. He's being drafted around other outfielders that are not I don't know. I just think that his name is getting him drafted, so he's not really going to be a sleeper. If you take him, you're accepting some risk, although he's probably going to be decent. I guess he's probably being drafted right where he should be, really. The Phillies beat the Blue Jays 4-2. Bryson Stott leading off, playing second base. He also qualifies at shortstop. Rhys Hoskins batting second. Castellanos batting third. Cavan Biggio batting first, but then I figured out that this was a doubleheader. The Blue Jays played 2 games yesterday, so Biggio, that doesn't mean anything that he was batting leadoff. They just...
Squad. It's called split squad.
What did I say?
It's not a doubleheader, it's a split squad.
A split squad. Whatever.
Same thing.
Then the Phillies played the Blue Jays twice yesterday. Both the same teams. Usually when they have 2 games, they play 2 different teams. But in this case...
Oh, sorry.
The Phillies beat the Blue Jays 4-2 in the first game, and then the Phillies beat the Blue Jays 8-1 in the second game. Kikuchi took the loss yesterday. 3 1/3 innings, 2 earned runs, 3 strikeouts, but 3 walks, which is a big problem. He needs to quit walking batters, okay? That's his problem. Brandon Marsh batted leadoff for the Phillies, went 1 for 3 with an RBI and a walk. He's batting .226. He's fun to watch, but is he fun to roster? I don't think so. George Springer batting leadoff, Bo Bichette second. Now here's their real lineup here. Forget about Cavan Biggio batting leadoff in the first game. The Cardinals beat the Marlins 16-2. Steven Matz threw 5 innings, only 1 earned run, struck out 3, and didn't walk anybody. That's a good sign. He's 2-0 on the spring. Trevor Rogers, Mr. Comeback of the Year, right? We have him in the Comeback Player of the Year, and he got smoked yesterday. 8 earned runs in 4 innings pitched, only struck out 2 and walked 2. It was a nightmare for Rogers. The Cardinals scored 9 runs in the second inning, and they kept him in for 4 straight innings. I know this is all about getting warmed up and stuff, but that was not a good outing for him. I'm still not going to hold it against him. I think he could have a comeback year, because even though his stats were horrible last year, there wasn't any significant drop in his underlying stats were okay. Jordan Walker's back, of course. He went 1 for 4 yesterday. He's just blowing up the joint. And guess what? I told you that the Cardinals scored 9 runs in the second inning off of Trevor Rogers. Now, there was no home runs in this game. The Cardinals, well, there was a home run for Miami, but the Cardinals, they scored 16 runs and they didn't hit any home runs, I noticed. So there you go on that. There was just a ton of hitting going on in that game. 17 hits for St. Louis and 16 runs scored. That's a feat, I'll tell you that. They were able to bring home all of the bacon yesterday. Jazz Chisholm, he's the only one in the game to hit a home run yesterday, and he's on the Miami Marlins. And he, of course, he got an RBI off of that, but that was his second home run of the spring. And we know he's healthy because he's stealing bases and he's hitting home runs. And it's a great sign for all of you who decided to hold on to Jazz Chisholm or try and acquire him when the risks seem to be so high. Alrighty. Moving on, people. Cubbies didn't beat the White Sox. This was a tie game. Oscar Colas. What do we think of Oscar Colas? He's batting .300 this spring. He went 0 for 3 yesterday, but he has a ton of at-bats. When I looked at the spring training stats today, I always sort by the number of at-bats. Like, who's getting the most at-bats in spring? It kind of can tell you, like, you know, just how interested a manager is in seeing a player and what they can accomplish. Oscar Colas is in the top 10 of the number of at-bats this spring. Now, I don't know if Mitchell's here, but early in the season, when we started drafting our AL only, it was the first draft of the season, Mitchell drafted Oscar Colas. And then I noticed that, and when I went to we did a supplemental draft in our Dynasty League. It's a 15-team, 50 players on each team Dynasty League. And you have to cut your roster down to 45 or 40 players before the supplemental draft. Oscar Colas was available in this league, and I decided to go and approach Mitchell and ask him why did he draft Oscar Colas so early in our American League only draft. And he told me that he believed that Oscar Colas was going to get every opportunity to play this year, and the White Sox were going to give him that opportunity this spring. I said, okay, so I went and looked at his numbers, and sure enough, Oscar Colas is not only playing every single day, but he's batting high up in the lineup, and I think we're going to talk about him in the undervalued section because I don't have any more notes here in my box scores, and I did some investigating on him this morning. So moving on, Mike Clevenger, horrible. He struck out 3 earned runs, 3 hits, 3 2/3 innings. He's got a 7.11 ERA on the spring. The Dodgers beat the Cubbies 7-9. Ryan Pepio pitched yesterday, 3 innings, 1 earned runs, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. Jason Hayward batted leadoff for the Dodgers. And James Outman just keeps impressing everybody with his .310 batting average this spring, still playing left field and looks to be an everyday player going into this season. It really does look like James Outman is going to get the job. Nico Horner batted leadoff for the Cubbies, and then Ian Happ right after him. I love it. JD Martinez hit his first home run of the spring yesterday, and Cody Bellinger hit his first triple. Nick Madrigal stole a base. The Athletics beat the Giants 7-2. Caprellion pitched 4 innings, 5 hits, 1 earned run, and struck out 4. He's got a 1.59 ERA on the spring. And moving over to Ross Stripling for the Giants, not having a great spring. 10 hits on 5 innings, 4 earned runs, 3 strikeouts, and a 6.75 ERA. Jock Peterson stole his first base yesterday, and he's one of my undervalued players that we're going to talk about. Michael Conforto, Thairo Estrada. That's the top 3 in the order. Jock Peterson, Michael Conforto, and then Thairo Estrada, 1, 2, and 3. Jock Peterson went 1 for 4, batting .278 on the spring. I think he's going to have a better season than he's being given credit for. Moving on, the Diamondbacks beat the Rockies 4-2. Ryan Nelson pitched 4 innings, 1 earned run, struck out 6, and only walked 1. Kyle Lewis batting leadoff for the Diamondbacks. I don't know for sure about Kyle Lewis, if he's going to get everyday playing time, if he's going to be in a split situation. Lourdes Gurriel batting 3rd. I love this guy. We're going to talk about him again too. And Brad Hand came in for the Rockies. 1 inning pitched. No strikeouts. 1 hit. We'll see what happens there. I don't know what they're going to do with Daniel Bard and Brad Hand. But maybe they'll share saves. Maybe one of them will get traded. I don't really know. Not like there's a lot of saves to be had in Colorado since their team is so bad. All right, I take that back. Colorado's not that bad. They're not that bad. They're pretty bad. They're not that bad. The Angels beat the Kansas City Royals 12-1 yesterday, and SM King Turd wrote in the chat room, he wanted to know if we saw this Ben Joyce yesterday pitching for the Angels, and I did not see it, but I went and looked at it. He pitched 1 inning and struck out 2. His ERA on the spring is 0. Didn't really know anything about this guy. Last year at Double-A, which is the highest that he's made it, he pitched 13 innings, allowed 11 hits, and struck out 20 in 13 innings. That's good, with only 4 walks. So his ERA was 2.08, and his whip was 1.15. He was the 3rd-round pick by the Angels out of Tennessee, and he's renowned for a fastball that's been clocked as high as 105 miles an hour. He made 13 appearances for Double-A. That's 1 inning per appearance. And he recorded a 20-4 strikeout-to-walk ratio, blah, blah, blah. He's probably not going to make the Angels. He's definitely going to start in the minors. But what King Turd wanted us to notice was that how wild he was. He struck out a guy that was trying to avoid getting hit by a pitch, and the bat went through the zone, so the umpire had to call it a strike. That's pretty fun. But he's a future closer for the Angels. The Mariners beat the Padres 10-5. I like Ty France, batting second. Cal Raleigh, the catcher, again, batting right in the middle of the order. You gotta love that. Austin Nola could be a good sleeper to pick late in drafts. He was the very last catcher off the board. We only have, in our NL only, we only have a one catcher. It's one catcher. So there's a lot of catchers left that are sharing time and stuff like that. I don't know how great he's going to be. He's probably going to let me down again, but he does have the potential to hit 20 homers, and I know because I saw it. And so we'll see what happens. But Chris Flexen, Lenny's favorite Seattle Mariners guy, 4 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, 1 walk yesterday. He's 2-0 this spring. And he went against Blake Snell, who got the loss. 3 innings pitched, 7 earned runs, 5 strikeouts, and 3 walks. You can't really hold any of this shit against pitchers like Blake Snell because he's just too experienced for you to tell anything at this early stage in the game, and it is spring training. So let me check the chat room, and then we'll talk about our sleepers. I'm sweating. How's everybody doing?
Great chat room.
All right. Hello, Eddie. Hello, Stardog. Hello, Mal Pal.
Get 25 in the chat room.
Yay. All right. That's good. So everybody's doing well. Let's get started on some sleepers. Yes, Lenny says Flexen's his sleeper. I just don't. Yeah, he's going to stay sleeping the whole season probably. I don't know. I'm dogging on Lenny. So let's talk about Jared Schuster. Atlanta Braves. Wasn't really in anybody's topic of conversation before they just strangely sent down two youngsters that were about to be fighting for the 5th rotation spot. Now Kyle Wright is out too, so it became now down to Jared Schuster and Dylan Dodd for Atlanta's 5th starter because Mike Soroka's out too. And let me tell you about this Jared Schuster, 24-year-old starting pitcher for Atlanta. He made it to AAA last year. He threw 48 innings at AAA, and his ERA was 4.25 with a 1.22 whip. This spring so far, he's appeared in 4 games, 3 of the games he started, so he's pitched 12 2/3 innings. He struck out 16 and only walked 2. He's having a great spring, 5 hits in 12 2/3 innings pitched. Schuster was a first-round pick for the Braves in 2020, and he played last year, 2022, he played at both AA and AAA. Posted a 3.29 ERA and a 145 strikeouts with 38 walks over 139 innings in the minors last year between AA and AAA. He's a lefty, which we love. And he was much better at AA than he was at AAA. But I do think that he is going to be the 5th starter for the Atlanta Braves. And his ADP right now is basically not being drafted. He's 5.94 ADP, which means you would have to have like 60 rounds in a 12-team league or whatever. Anyway, he's not being drafted at all. He's probably sitting out on the waiver wire. And I would go and pick him up and give him a chance because he's worth a stream. He's having an excellent spring, and that's really what we look for in the spring. Riley Green, 198 ADP. That's about round, what do you think, round 18 to 20? Riley Green, he only hit 253 last year with 5 home runs and 1 stolen base. Okay? But in 2021, he hit 24 home runs, he stole 16 bases, and he only got caught stealing once. So far this spring, he's batting .314 with 3 home runs and a stolen base, and he's definitely getting the job done. I see him up in the top third of the batting order constantly, and Detroit is an up-and-coming team. Riley Green going 198 overall. That's based on his stats from last year, and it does not reflect his ceiling whatsoever. I'm really glad I drafted this guy late in one of my drafts. I think I asked Malpal, should I draft... I can't remember who it was, Malpal. Was it, should I draft Riley Green or Jared Walsh, or Riley Green or JD Martinez? And Malpal said to draft Riley Green, play for greatness, and that's what I'm doing, because he is a highly touted prospect, and I think he's a little bit undervalued. Next on the list is King Turd here, Leonard?
Yes, he is.
Okay, here's my message I got from King Turd on Twitter. He said, you and Lenny should check out Reed Detmers, throwing his fastball 95 to 97 with the slider at 89 to 91. That'll play. He was solid after getting sent down last year. I'm in. And I said, okay, thanks. And then I went to do it. I went to look at Reed Detmers, and I tell you this, he's actually going a little earlier than I thought at first, but he's still an undervalued pitcher. Ranked 213 ADP. That's round 20 or so, round 19. That's based on the fact that last year his ERA wasn't that good. He hasn't really done much to impress people. But right now, this spring, like, first of all, when your fastball is 95 to 97 and your slider is 89 to 91, that's a huge difference. And that is the great, what's a word? It's just... when you have a huge difference in speed between your breaking pitches and your fastball, then you have a better chance of getting batters out. What caused his velocity to go up so much, I don't really know. But he threw 5 innings the other day against Milwaukee, and he allowed 1 run on 2 hits and no walks, and he struck out 6. So this is really throwing hitters off. This fact that he can throw so hard now. He's only 23 years old. For some reason, I felt like he had been around longer than that. He is slated in as the Angels' number 2 or 3 starting pitcher. And I believe that King Turd is right when he says to take a look at this guy, draft him in your leagues, and, you're getting to the point in drafts where you're stuck with these 4-something ERA fools that you have to put on your roster, and they're just going to bring down your numbers. They're just going to... The other day, I think I mentioned this in chat, I needed some strikeouts. So what do? I draft Madison Bumgarner. And this isn't even an active spot in my roster. It's a backup plan. It's a reserve bench player. RotoWire moved me from 3rd in the projected standings to 7th in the projected standings because strikeouts, forget about it, okay? Forget about it. Sure, I gained a point or 2 in strikeouts, but I lost 3 points in ERA and whip over this guy. Do not draft pitchers that are going to hurt you. You get guys like Merrill Kelly. You get guys like Reed Detmers, who I'm very thankful was brought to my attention. And, okay, well, I can't do anything about Gallo's password right now, but I'll help you out in a little bit. I hope you're still there, Gallo. I can reset it to anything you want. But I can't do it in the middle of a podcast. Oscar Colas. All right, this is a Mitchell. This one was recommended to me by Mitchell. Now, Oscar Colas, 24 years old, 272 ADP overall. I think his ADP is growing by the day. I think it's going down by the day. I think that he is impressing a lot this spring. But his fantasy outlook, as written by RotoWire, was that he played 3 levels last year, high A, double A, and triple A in the same season. He slashed .314 with a .371 on base percentage, 23 home runs in 117 games. Rick Hahn, general manager of the White Sox, says that he has a chance to that he was going to be given a chance this spring to start right field every day. And I think that's exactly where he's going to end up. And Gavin Sheets, you're shit out of luck. Oscar Colas is taking your job. That's so unfortunate because the hype around Gavin Sheets was so high too. Everybody loved Gavin Sheets just a couple years ago. Anyways, he has a chance to be a 30-homer hitter in the big leagues. 24 years old, but he does strike out a lot, and we'll see how it works out. He only walked 6.2% and struck out 25.6% at AA and AAA, so we'll see what happens to him in the majors, but he's having a good spring. This spring, he's batting .300, 1 stolen base, 2 home runs in 40 at-bats this spring. So, he's been impressive. I think he's earned the job. Oscar Colas, depending on where he goes. Don't get all crazy with this kid, okay? But there you go. Here's another duo of players that I think should be looked at a little closer. So you have, on the same team, you have Patrick Wisdom and Chris Morel. Now look, I'm not trying to stick up for Patrick Wisdom here, but his ADP is 474, while Chris Morel's ADP is 259. Does this have anything to do with the fact that Christopher Morel can play all over the place? But the thing about Christopher Morel is that he doesn't have a starting job. That's not to say that he can't flourish, okay, as a utility guy, because I've seen several in my past who get to play every day, and they play all over the place. Christopher Morel plays third, second, shortstop, center field, and Patrick Wisdom, clearly, he's a third baseman. So I think a lot of people are going into the season thinking that Patrick Wisdom doesn't have an everyday job, but he is listed as the starting third baseman for the Cubbies. So what justifies a 200 player difference or a 200 pick difference in ADP? Probably because Patrick Wisdom's batting average was 207 last year, but Christopher Morel's wasn't that much better. He had 230. Christopher Morel is projected 239 average, 15 homers, and 10 stolen bases. Patrick Wisdom is projected 213 average, 22 home runs, 50 and 5 stolen bases. Don't expect Patrick Wisdom to steal any bases, okay? I think that's ridiculous. He stole 8 last year, but he's getting old. He's a power hitter. He is not going to continue to run like he did. At least his stolen bases aren't going to increase. But when you look at the 200-point difference between ADPs of Christopher Morel and Patrick Wisdom, you have to say to yourself, like, for what reason? Is it just the position eligibility that people are loving from this Christopher Morel? He's only 23. Maybe that's another thing. He clearly hasn't reached his peak, but he still strikes out a lot. And Patrick Wisdom, he's going to crush your batting average, but if you need some power late in the draft, this guy is not even being drafted. 474 overall ADP. Jock Peterson is next on my list. 237 ADP. Last year, Jock Peterson had a career-high batting average, 274, hit 23 home runs, 70 RBIs, 57 runs, and 3 stolen bases. He had a 144 weighted runs created plus and a 274 average, the best figures of his big league career. He also hit well against left-handed pitching. Okay, last year he hit 245 against lefties with a 333 on base percentage, and he only hit against lefties 57 plate appearances. But here's the thing about Jock Peterson. He is listed as the starting left fielder for the Giants. And I already told you today that he's batting toward the top of the order. That's going to make a big difference for this guy's value. If he was batting at the bottom of the lineup, I would tell you not. I probably wouldn't be having him in this discussion right now. But he strikes out 23% of the time and walks almost 10% of the time. So he's fairly good in on-base percentage leagues. And his contact rate, even though and you know what? He's only 30, okay? Last year he was 30. He'll be 31 this year. 31 is not necessarily an old guy. He feels like he's been around forever. But he's going to get to play. He's going to hit against lefties. He had the best batting average of his career last year. If you look at the graphs at RotoWire, you will see that all of his little graph lines are green. The only problem is his strikeout rate, which is still way lower than a lot of the these fools that are hitting out there for power. It's 23.1. So yes, I'm a fan at the ADP of 237 and 270 overall. I'm absolutely a fan of Jock Peterson at that price. I think that Ty France is one of the better first basemen that you can get later. People talk about how first base drops off a cliff, and I do think it does, but there's some really good first basemen that you can get that are going to be perfectly sufficient for your roster. Number one is Nate Lowe. I mean, Nate Lowe I have in a couple different leagues, so I'm probably invested and biased. But when all the good, great first basemen go, you have Nate Lowe, who's going to get you a decent batting average. He's going to hit for power. He's going to be in the lineup every day, and he's absolutely rosterable. Christian Walker is another one. He might be going earlier than I want to talk about in this section. But Ty France, another decent, good first baseman, 28 years old for the Mariners, ADP 176. That's about round 15. He's excellent with contact. He has elite contact, and his average exit velocity is 24th percentile. Also, a 29th percentile hard hit rate. And he basically hits the ball really hard. His weighted runs created plus was 133, 130, and 127 over the past 3 seasons. He's got a very solid job at first base for the Mariners, and he's hitting very good so far this spring. Ty France, 2 home runs, 273 batting average in 33 at-bats. So he's doing well, and I think with his, like I said earlier, he's got elite skills batting. Not only does he hit the ball high and far, but he strikes out very little. 15% of the time he strikes out. His contact percentage is 82.9, which is excellent. He is a great pure hitter, and I definitely think that if you miss out on some of these great first basemen, you fall back on Ty France, and you will be good to go. The next guy I'm going to talk about is a guy I've already talked about, but I'm going to talk about him again. Lourdes Gurriel, ranking 227 in ADP. Last year, he only hit 5 home runs and stole 3 bases. Yes, he sucked, and he sucked the year before that. And probably his best season so far was 2021. He hit 21 homers, and 2019 he hit 21 homers or 20 homers, and then in the shortened 2020 season he hit 11 homers. So all 3 seasons, if you extended that shortened season into a full season, that would have been close to 30 homers. So this guy's hit at least 20 home runs 3 out of the last 4 seasons. So you think about it. The reason that his numbers are not great and he is a fantasy derelict is because he was batting in Toronto at the bottom of the order. He never got to be up in the middle of the order where he actually belongs. One thing you can guarantee with this guy is that you're going to get a good batting average. Absolutely. 227 overall, that's round 20 or later that you get in this guy, because people are just seeing that he only hit 5 home runs last year in 453 at-bats. Now, here's the thing. Last year, Lourdes Gurriel was playing after the season. We found out that he had been playing with a wrist injury. It required surgery this off-season. He missed most of September with a sore hamstring. So he's been plagued with injuries last year, and nobody really talked about it, and he kept it quiet that he was hitting with a wrist injury. Now think of it. That's going to affect how you hit. He still hit a career-high 32 doubles last year. And according to RotoWire, it tells you in mixed leagues, it's best used as a fantasy average stabilizer, a batting average stabilizer, especially with his chances for runs and RBI likely to diminish in a weaker Arizona lineup. I totally disagree. And look, I don't agree with everything RotoWire says. That's why you listen to me, because I have something different to say than what everybody else is telling you. I try to do my own work and look at it and make my own choices. And this kid is a good hitter. He's a pure hitter. And I don't care if he's hitting in Washington or if he's hitting in Arizona or if he's batting for the Pirates. If he's batting in the middle or at the top of the order, he is worth a fantasy investment. And his run and his RBIs will be affected by where he bats in the lineup. It's way more important than what team you hit on, because I'll tell you what, you look at the differences of play between the top of the lineup and the bottom of the lineup. Yes, he was in Toronto and he should have flourished, blah, blah, blah. But you can't when you're batting at the bottom of the lineup. Plus, he had some injuries there too. Anyways, Lourdes Gurriel strikes out 16% of the time and his contact rate is 82%. This is a pure hitter. He's not just going to be good for stabilizing your batting average late in drafts. I believe that he will hit 20 homers, even in Arizona, even around a crappy lineup, and he'll get more runs and RBIs than he's ever had. That's it. He's 29 years old. Okay, let me have a drink of my coffee. A couple more and then we'll go. Jared Walsh. He's next on my list. Okay, Jared Walsh. Remember him? Remember the guy that hit 29 homers in 2021 with a 277 batting average, and then all of a sudden last year he hit 15 homers with a 215 batting average, and everybody gave up on him and forgot about him? Well, he is the starting first baseman for the Angels, and he also could get some play back in the outfield. So, yes, he lost his outfield position eligibility because they played him solely at first base last year. But they did say that they were going to give him some chances to play more outfield, and he did play in the outfield at least once this spring. The manager, Phil Nevin, he said early in camp that he expects to see Walsh spend some time in the outfield this season. But he is the Angels' primary first baseman. So, when a guy hits 29 home runs and bats .277 with a .340 on base percentage and then has a shitty year, everybody just abandons him like he doesn't even exist. He's only 29. So, okay, let's talk about what happened. He required surgery to address thoracic outlet syndrome and missed the final month of the season. So, his strikeout rate spiked to 30.4%. But if you look at his strikeout rate, going back in history, he has fluctuated so much. In 2020, he struck out 13%, okay? In 2021, he struck out 26%, and last year he struck out 30%. The question is, the thoracic outlet syndrome, I think, scares a lot of people off because it's ended a lot of baseball careers. We don't really know for sure how to fix it like we do with Tommy John and all of that. There's been a few cases where baseball players have been able to come back from that, but especially pitchers, it just seems that they never turn out to be what they were before it. I have a little more faith in the hitters coming back from thoracic outlet syndrome. Thoracic, you know what I mean, okay? We need some initials for this stupid injury. Anyways, I'm not giving up completely on Jared Walsh. I do think he'll gain eligibility in the outfield. He's going to play first base every day. If he's that crappy, just drop him. But he's absolutely worth a pick late in the draft, especially since his ADP is 378th. Okay? Moving on. Ezekiel Tovar. So, Mitchell, come to the chat room. I'm doing a podcast right now. People messaging me while I'm doing the podcast. Ezekiel Tovar. This is one that I found through Scott White's article, through his most undervalued players. The reason that I bring him up is because it does look like he's going to be the everyday shortstop for Colorado this year. He had a breakout season last year. He hit .318 with a .386 on base percentage, 13 home runs, 17 steals on 20 attempts, and a 64 strikeout to walk ratio in 86 games. So, what they project for him this year, RotoWire projects him 10 homers, 26 stolen bases, a .270 batting average. He is going like 300 players earlier than Jared Walsh. He's going 239 ADP. So I don't know. I think a lot of people read the RotoWire sleepers. A lot of people read Scott White's articles on his undervalued players, and I guarantee when the season started drafting, it was Ezekiel Tovar was probably in like 450th, because here's what Scott White said about him. He said, Tovar might be the most underdrafted player this year, and what better place to state that case than right here. With his minor league numbers available for quick reference, the case isn't so hard to make. He takes those talents with him to Colorado, and well, fireworks could be the result. Normally, I'd worry about a batting average for a 21-year-old with little upper-level experience. But the batting average on balls in play boost from Coors Field makes him a legitimate 5-category threat, and yet he's available long after the last of the high-end shortstops goes off the board. If I haven't filled the position by the time Correa is taken, I'll typically hold out for Tovar and let Jeremy Pena, Ahmed Rosario, Nico Horner, and Thairo Estrada and Javier Baez. Okay, go by. I disagree that he's going to be better than Jeremy Pena or Ahmed Rosario or Thairo Estrada. I am definitely not taking Correa on any of my teams because he's too much of a risk. But obviously he's being drafted because of Scott White put him in his article. That's the thing. You got to watch out for these players that are being talked about by every expert in town because their ADP will rise so quickly. Everybody reads the same people. Everybody reads Scott White and these guys that are great. I mean, they're great fantasy experts, but everybody's reading it because it's free to everybody. So anyway, Ezequiel Tovar, I'm not drafting him over Thairo Estrada. No way. I'm not drafting him over Pena. I'm not drafting him over Ahmed Rosario. And I probably wouldn't draft him over Horner. But for those of you out there that you think maybe. Anyway, a couple more players, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these guys. I just will mention them. Miguel Vargas is one for the Dodgers, 23 years old, and you remember he wasn't allowed to swing the bat for the first 6 games of the season of the spring, and he was still walking, which is absurd in its own right. But in the last 5 games, he's got 4 extra base hits in 24 at bats, just in the last 5 games since he's been starting to be able to swing the bat again. He's got 4 extra base hits, a home run, and a .290 batting average. So I do believe that this guy is going to be the everyday second baseman for the Dodgers to start the season. They already kind of promised him that going into spring. But he also can play left field, third base, and first base if needed. So he's flexible in the position category. And he's 23 this year, so he's exciting. His ADP right now is 220. It's just getting a little too high to be calling him a sleeper. You know what I mean? JD Martinez, 212. That's around 18 or so. JD Martinez didn't look any worse than he normally does last year, except for his stats. He hit 16 homers, 274 batting average. They're projecting JD Martinez 269 average with 20 home runs. Still, though, the team that he's on, look at his RBIs. They're expecting him to get 76 RBIs and 79 runs next year. And if you can get that in the 18th round, that's excellent. You're not going to find those types of runs and RBI numbers that late in the draft. His strikeout percentage did not go up that high compared to what it's been before. In fact, it was about the same as it was in 2020, 24.4%. He's still taking walks. I think that he's going to be their designated hitter for LA, but he could also play some time in the outfield. It's just that his defense has not been that great and has kind of really suffered in the last couple years. His defense, but his contact rate is still decent, 72.8. And his home run to fly ball ratio, there was a huge drop last year. So whether or not that means that he's not hitting the ball as hard or as high or as far or whatever, but it was only 10.3% last year. When in his heyday, his home run to fly ball ratio was 33.8%, 29%, and it's gone down in the last couple of years. But I would say that 10% is quite the unlucky. I would say that it's not that bad. It's just not that bad. He still hit 43 doubles last year, so his power is not completely gone. And look, he only hit 16 homers across 596 plate appearances. But you're talking about a guy coming from a crappiest lineup in Boston to a great lineup in Los Angeles. He's going to be hitting DH, and I do think that he suffered from a little bit of bad luck last year. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't count on 30 homers, but you could probably count on 20. And his ADP, 212 overall. He's going with some, and I don't think that here's the thing. I don't think he qualifies as anything but a utility guy. I think that he's going to have to play some games in the outfield before you can even use him as an outfielder in fantasy. And that's it for today, my fellow Americans. We will see you tomorrow for Lady and the Legend at 9 a.m., and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.